Right, it says avoid legal snags by telling people they're being recorded. So, Sherv, Andre, you're being recorded.
That's okay.
Cool.
Avoid legal snags by wearing pants also.
Oh, no, I'll be back in a minute. Andre, so excited to have you join us for this call. Super excited. But I bet you I'm not as excited as this man right here, Sherv, who is the Monster Squad's #1 fan, aren't you, Sherv?
Oh man, big time! It's an honour.
Number one. Wow, that's saying a lot there, Sherv. That's high up there. That's pretty rad. Thanks.
Oh, man, since I was 10 years old.
Well, I'm glad we got to hang out for a little bit here. So it's good.
Yeah, man, it's an honour. Thank you so much. Thanks,
yeah,
Adam.
Sherv, I had no problem, mate. So Sherv's my pal, obviously, and I says, "Oh, I'm going to be speaking to Andre. Do you want to come on?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it." So glad to have you on, Sherv.
Absolutely. Where is everybody at right now?
We're both in Scotland, me and Sherv.
Okay.
I'm in
Falkirk. What part? Oh, okay.
Falkirk.
Yeah, and I'm on the East Coast. I'm on the East, just opposite Edinburgh, Andre.
Okay.
So
like on the St. Andrews side? I mean, on the St. Andrews side?
Yeah. I'm only like half an hour from St. Andrews.
North or south?
I'm south of St. Andrews.
Okay, so let's see. The closest I've been to Scotland once. I got a great opportunity. It was always on my list, and I'm a golfer too. So it was a little bonkers because I got to go to St. Andrews with a group, and I got to play 4 awesome days. And the only time I went south of St. Andrews, we went to Kingsbarns.
Nice.
And then we went north up to Carnoustie, and then the rest of the time we went to St. Andrews proper. So that was awesome. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, beautiful place. How long ago was that, Andre?
Let's see. I think that was like 2015, 2016. Summer of, I want to say 15.
Fantastic.
If you're a golfer, you have to come to Scotland, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
You absolutely do. And I was certainly fortunate enough to do that trip, but it's not saying that I want it to be the only one.
No, but and I hope you brought a coat, because no doubt it rained when you were here.
Here's the awesome thing about that trip. I was there for like 5.5 days, which isn't long enough. We played 4 days, and it was in June, and we had fabulous weather, no rain and no wind for 4 days. It was awesome.
Wow.
So we got very lucky.
It does happen sometimes.
So yeah, apparently those 4 days was the only time that it ever happened. So it's good. Not saying that I wanted some of the Scottish weather experience while I was trying to, shank a ball into the hotel, but it would have been nice to have it, but I'm glad it didn't, because I wasn't playing well that year, and now I'm playing well, so it's fine.
Good. And if you ever come back to Scotland, give us a shout.
Yeah.
That's totally happening. So we got to figure out a way to and a reason when the world starts turning again.
Exactly. When things start
everybody just kind of
again.
hit pause and like, come on, guys, we all have stuff to do. Let's take care of this mess.
So let's talk about Wolfman's Got Nards. I seen this a week or so ago. Brittany sent me the link, Andre, and I watched it and I loved it. Absolutely brilliant. Well done. I don't know if you use this as a yardstick for success, but I noticed today that it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics.
Yeah, it's weird that outlet, Rotten Tomatoes, has become sort of a measuring stick and a barometer for whatever success is nowadays.
Yeah.
Is success is popularity on social media? Is success in what is now box office, which we don't have any anymore, but on whatever sale, whatever revenue comes in, or is it just if a handful of people like it? But no, that's awesome to have on Rotten Tomatoes, and interestingly enough, it's going strong, and Rotten Tomatoes is based on reviews, and and
Yeah.
actually Rotten Tomatoes accredited reviewers, I guess. And luckily that's in a way, so it's not just everybody that's kind of has a laptop that can be a movie critic or a reviewer, which doesn't mean those people don't count. They actually count more than the established journalists sometimes,
Yeah.
because there's more of them in there and their voice is louder. But to have that critical review is always something that everybody strives for. And what you hope for is that the majority are positive, or at least pull something out of whatever you've done that they can enjoy or that they like. And then you're just going to have some that just don't get it or don't like it, and that's totally fine. But your goal is to have at least a majority, and so far we've had a pretty good, strong majority, and it's only been a couple weeks, so.
Yeah,
We'll
exactly.
see how that continues to go.
Well, like I say, I saw it before it was officially released, and I absolutely had to use that opportunity to rub it in to Sherv, to let him know that I'd seen it. But then when it was, didn't I, mate? I sent him a text saying, "Guess what I'm watching?" And he was like, and I sent a picture of the poster that you've got behind you there, Andre, and he was like, "No effing way." But then when it was released, Sherv, I saw you put on Facebook that you were watching it, and you put on saying best movie documentary ever.
Yeah, by far, definitely, Andre. Blew my mind.
Well, thanks, Sherv. Now, are we just saying that because we're clouded because Sherv is number one on on the fan list, or what was Sherv? Here's my opportunity to turn the interview around. Tell me what you, not what you just liked about it, but what connected with you, or what things did you pull out of that? Because I always like hearing that from the people that get to view it and listen to their feedback of the things that connected with them, because it's different for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you've got, when you've interviewed the different audiences, the cinema audiences, when you've went to obviously different locations in the States, is fantastic to see obviously the cast and the crew now, and obviously them speaking about the film. But the one thing that I really loved is the way that you've directed the whole film, as in the music is very visceral. So when you go, there's different parts when you're in the cinemas, visiting the cinemas, and you're talking to the fans, and you could see how heartfelt everyone is when they're talking about it, and how you guys see it as well, as obviously being the main actors in the movies and in the film itself. And it was just the whole feeling, obviously, when you just that visceral feeling, is just, I had goosebumps up at the back of my neck. It was just, it's hard to describe, Andre, because obviously I've been such a fan since I was 10 years old, but it just blew my mind, just totally blew my mind.
So not only, yeah, I think with you, the overall, kind of, overall bubble of it worked, but it sounds like you were relating to the other fans and people that, that were just talking about it, and you felt connected to them in some way, because they could have been speaking for you.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Good.
Definitely.
Good.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome to hear, because that was one of the things that we, Henry and I strived for, because you both saw it, and hopefully the people that do get to watch it don't just consider it a making of documentary, or a Where Are They Now documentary, or just a straight fan service spoonful of nostalgia documentary, which those are all great, and we can enjoy those in tidbits, but we wanted a little something broader and a little something deeper here. And it was really trying to find a conversation about how film, any film or piece of art or song or TV show or book, can actually connect with a person or a group of persons, and how that can, kind of, impact their lives. And this analysis of that just happened to be through the lens of Monster Squad fans. So it sort of served, 3 or 4 different parallel purposes, but we were hoping to go a little deeper. So it sounds like it worked with you guys as well.
Yeah,
oh,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Objective achieved, I think, Andre made. What I found interesting was that, and I don't want to spoil, the film for people who are going to watch it, but the very first question that gets asked is, so the first face we see, I think, is Fred Decker. And he gets asked, is the Monster Squad a cult movie? And Fred's answer is, I don't know. I don't know if it's a cult movie or not. What do you think, Andre? What sort of criteria does a movie need to tick to be classed as a cult movie?
I think, and we kind of cover this in the film, that definition maybe has changed, over the years of what we assumed cult means. Because cult is different than a cult classic. That's been taken, sort of into another category as well. But what we also found was that a ton of fans, that whether it was the 38 of them that saw it in the movie theater when it came out, or the, it might have been 40, I think, total. But, whether they saw it in the movie theater or they saw it on HBO and recorded it and passed their tape around the neighborhood, or they went to their local video store every weekend and rented the same movie over and over again. A lot of those kids at the time, they didn't know the movie was, didn't perform well at the box office. They just saw something that they liked and thought it was a huge thing for them. Yeah. And so a lot of people watch this documentary and go, what are you talking about? This movie was a failure in the box office. I never knew that. Like, what are you talking about? This is insane. And then they really get into, that kind of, flabbergasted mindset. It was like, I had no idea because this was just big to me. So if you categorize those as it was just an awesome movie for them, then it wasn't something weird or off the fringe at the time. It was very mainstream and very big for them. Years later, when you look back on something, you're like, yeah, this is absolutely a cult movie, as defined by what we call it today. Something that was obscure and weird and non-mainstream, but then found an audience. And then I guess that's technically true as well if you look at it from that lens. But it wasn't fringe and non-mainstream and obscure. It was a giant studio movie in '87 that had a lot of marketing and a big cast and awesome creature effects and, a worldwide release. So that's not really obscure. It just didn't perform for a number of reasons that I think we look into the main reasons why it didn't work in the box office.
Yeah. But
that's the only place it didn't work. It really found its place in the neighborhoods and the schoolyards and the cul-de-sacs and, the housing subdivisions, where these kids were sharing it with each other. And that's what's interesting about the dynamic of the fandom of Monster Squad is these people come together around something. It just happens to be this film, but they see it almost as their responsibility or their duty to share their favorite thing with everybody. So I don't think it was a cult movie because I think it was supposed to be this big, mainstream thing. But 30 something years later, I think it's definitely a cult classic. But I think it also has a different type of category, which there's not a lot of other titles in there. Because ever since the doc has been released and people have watched the screen or watched it on VOD or on their Blu-rays, a new conversation has started. It's not just about how this movie impacted me or how we've loved it for 30 something years, or, I shared it with my neighborhood and my cousins and my big brother showed it to me, or is it a movie I went to the drive-in with my dad? It's a new conversation about Monster Squad when we're talking about Wolfman's Got Nards, is that this movie still holds up even today.
Yeah.
Because of the subject matter, the heart and the authenticity, or the archetypes in it, and everybody can still relate. Now, that's why we have a whole second generation of Monster Squad fans that are anywhere from 20 years old and down. Like, 5 years old is the new 9 years old, and there are 5-year-olds out there that are loving this movie for some reason. And then as they grow up, no matter what they saw it, part of this new conversation is also original kid fans that now have families and kids of their own are seeing the movie in a completely different light. And they're relating to the parents and having kids, or the danger, and then what would you do if your kids were in this situation? And they're not just going on the kids' adventure, they're looking at it from a whole other point of view. And what everybody keeps saying in this new conversation, which is fascinating to me, is that, and I'm not saying, this is what, we've had discussions about, is Monster Squad will still hold up in another 20 years, more so than giant movies of today that have no connection. They're certainly enjoyable and awesome spectacles and cool things to watch, but they won't connect on the same, visceral or sociological or family level as something like the Monster Squad does. And therefore this movie will that movie will still last longer than some of these other giant movies that you see today. And I'm not saying that. That's been, a dozen or so people in the last, 3 or 4 weeks that have said that. And it's an interesting conversation, because maybe it will be. And then what do you call a movie that does that? No matter whether it's Monster Squad or something else. Is that a cult movie? Is that a cult class? Is that just a movie that has, lasting power, that can connect on the archetypal level of any human dynamic? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. If we're talking about it in another 20 years, it would be fascinating. And look, I get a kick out of talking about Monster Squad, Wolfmans Got Nards, anything else that I've done or anything else that other people are doing. But boy, that would be a fascinating conversation if people are still talking about it 20, 25 years from now.
Totally. Yeah. And you mentioned, no, it's definitely not. You've mentioned before, kids watching it, 5's the new 9. I always sort of consider the Monster Squad. I always put it in a section of movies, which I probably shouldn't have been watching when I did watch it. And the 80s was marvelous for that, for putting out sort of movies that were aimed at kids, but kids shouldn't really, if we're honest, be watching them, like Monster Squad and Gremlins and things like that. I got sent a Gremlins book the other day. It's a kid's book. It's a 12 Days of Gizmo Christmas book. So I read it to my son the other night. He's 3, and I nearly stopped halfway through because it was just so violent. It was just so violent. But I love how these movies are targeted at kids, and the kids have just went, the parents have went, yeah, you can watch that, and just sort of leave the room. And we wear out the VHS watching these movies over and over again, and then our parents wonder why we're having nightmares.
Exactly, and I think that's a generational thing that never changes, but I think right at that time of 80s movies and 80s television and 80s kind of, world events and, international and domestic politics and things that were going on, especially in entertainment and music, it was such a paradigm shifting time. And we really kind of leapfrogged into, kind of this next, paradigm of evolution as a planet, let alone, just a country or two. But and it may have been the kind of the clarion call of, hey, we should be protecting people with impressionable minds better than we are now. But I don't know if that necessarily works. I'm not an expert here, but I also think that too much bubbling and too much protection is doing a disservice, because they don't experience anything. And when they get out in the world and they see it, they have no idea how to react to it, because they don't know what it is. And I think in the, starting in the 70s and in the 80s, and then definitely in the 90s, because, technology and graphic and everything and video games, really kind of changed the shift there. But I think, the exposure to all that stuff that was not really, helicopter mommed and helicopter dad, back in the day, and, don't, oh my gosh, how dare, my kid watch this? How dare you make this thing, for my impressionable young kid? Some things probably shouldn't be watched. No doubt. That's why there's ratings. That's why there's parental consent. That's why there's parental controls. But everybody still gets to see it, and you get to decide for yourself how that kind of affects you or shapes you. And I'm not advocating, 8-year-olds go see horribly graphic, real life stuff or accidents or portrayals of gross stuff until they understand what that is. I'm saying it's on a scalable kind of platform there. I think now our kids, may be extremely separated from, exposure to just about anything. And, we'll see in 15, 20 years, how that works. Hopefully it works out great and everybody's, either of the same mind, a little more compassionate or a little bit, thoughtful of other people and mindful of their own space in their own world. I'm not sure about that last part, though. The trend right now is really poor of individuals being mindful of their own space in the world. Not only how they affect other people around them, but what they're doing in their own little, 8-foot bubble. It's frightening sometimes when you look at it. And I think that comes from being kind of closed in. We're all on social media all the time. I'm not a hater of video games. I think video games are super fun. I'm just not a gamer anymore. Never really was. I wasn't cool. And
you were cool in my house anyway.
My last gaming platform was the first Nintendo. That was the last one I owned. Wow. So I'm totally not, an expert in gaming. But I think that isolation and the one-offs revert back. Now, back to films and TVs and stuff of our generation, we were exposed to, look what we were exposed to. It was I don't know the height, but maybe the height before the end of the Cold War. So we had, every turn around the corner, the world was going to end at any moment. Yeah. We had these awesome battles against good versus evil or East versus West, which shaped kind of our mindset of how the world works, which is a little one-sided. So you should always at least understand more than one side if you want to make an opinion about it, which is eye-opening, when you actually do that. We also still had, when we were kids, we had Vietnam stories, which were just terrible. But that shaped who we were to understand that there was bad shit that went on, and then for bad reasons and no outcomes. Because, our growing up in the 80s being Cold War kids, Vietnam stories were the lesson of this is not good, and everything else was rah rah us and bad them. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, this is a contrary tale. Let's learn about this, or this isn't as bright and happy ending as everything else that we see. But then even in the music, and it was such an explosion of creation and art and education and knowledge that you could get, that I think it shaped a generation differently than any other generation could shape a generation.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a very long-winded kind of answer, but I went on a roll there.
The digital generation.
Exactly. So Andre, obviously the Monster Squad's been with you for the majority of your life. You decide to do Wolfman's Got Nards. Actually, before I go on to the question I was going to ask, I'll just quickly ask you, when did you know what the title of the documentary was going to be? Or did you have the title first?
If that's the quick first answer, the question, the first quick answer is, as soon as I realized that there was a project or a documentary to be made, it was really kind of the first thing that jumps in your mind as a title. And then as we actually got into developing and producing the documentary, it was still the number one choice. Henry and I, and even friends and Ryan Lambert and Ashley, we'd be together. I'd bat around other alternate titles. And there just really wasn't an alternate. That's if you're going to make something about the dynamic of this movie impacting people, that's the only title that there is.
Yeah,
definitely.
There was absolutely nothing else that you could call it. So what I was going to say was, you wrote this, you produced this, you directed this. And I proceeded the question with, this has been, Monster Squad's been with you majority of your life. You must really, really love the movie and, the things that have come with it to devote yourself to directing, writing and producing this documentary.
Well, I think I don't disagree. Also, I'm going to start off with, yes, I co-wrote, I directed, I produced this. I didn't make this on my own.
No.
I had an
No.
amazing opportunity to team up with Pilgrim Studios, Pilgrim
Yeah.
Media Group, and then a group of guys and gals inside of that studio were kind of, my team, my squad for making this documentary, led by Henry McComas and Wes Caldwell, Shane Patterson, Aaron Kunkel, even cameras by Esteban and Anthony Leisner and Eric Lakowski and Jen Oth. All these people helped make this, movie happen on the ground level. And it wouldn't look or sound or feel anything like that without those people, and mostly Henry McComas. And I was certainly lucky, because the idea of what I had, of what I thought was out there, was all brought to life, by that team of people. And it was a fabulous experience. And I'm extremely fortunate enough that I ran into them to make this happen. But it has been a part of my life, but it kind of changed, it kind of evolves, and
Yeah.
it changes even in itself of how it's impacts anybody, especially myself. And none of this would have happened if we didn't have that original cast reunion thing in 2006, which started this whole kind of resurgence of the Monster Squad. That was a dead title that only a few, I mean, it's not a few, it's a ton of fans around the world really liked, but they couldn't talk about it. They would barely discuss it. The internet was, just starting to, in the mid and late 90s, they could start, chatting with each other about it, but it wasn't this big thing. And then 2006 happened, and it just blew up. And we thought that me and other castmates that were exposed to this kind of initial kind of, oh, let's revisit this fun thing that apparently a lot of people like. We thought it was all going to kind of die off after a couple, months or maybe a year or two. And that did not happen.
Yeah.
It just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's an interesting phenomenon. And I haven't seen a lot of examples of that. And then as you're exposed to meeting the individuals like Sherv, like Adam, who this movie's been with you since the first time you saw it, to hear these stories and the connection of those individuals, that's what I started noticing. As personally, I started noticing that was different, and that was something interesting. And I thought those stories were a story.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you did it. So glad you did it. But you finished Wolfman's Got Nards back in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the delay? Why did you keep us hanging on?
It was
You rascal.
not me. So the kind of production, the development, the production, and the locking this film in and then festivaling was actually in a very short time frame. Henry and the gang, we started rolling cameras in April of 2017.
Right.
We premiered at our first festival in April of 2018.
Right.
So in that 10 and a half months, because it was about a month and a half, we shot 50 terabytes of footage while we're on the road going on tour. I was also doing another TV show at the time for Nerdist that was co-hosted. I created called Short Ends, which showcased short films and the short filmmakers. And so I was doing that with my buddy Ryan Lambert was my co-host on that. In the meantime that we were making this doc and going on the road and going to 17 cities in 17 days, going to London twice, doing interviews in LA, doing interviews all over the country and all over, the UK. That's a very compressed amount of time.
Yeah.
But then we launched at our first festival, and our festival run was amazing. And it was about 6.5 months long, nonstop. When the doc went all over the world, we went some amazing places. And I don't know. For some of the reasons, you think you get all of this kind of media acclaim and fan response during a festival run. That's what usually creates an acquisition and a distribution deal like that.
Yeah.
We had a lot of interested parties early. We decided to, get through about 2/3 of our festival season, which was about 3 or 4 months, and make sure that we knew what was happening, kind of what the response was, because you don't want to just take the first offer that comes off the table, because it's usually not good. I mean, we had a lot of conversations and a lot of offers.
Yeah.
They just weren't as great. And so when you started those process, you're like, well, let's see, let's get through our second half of our festival run and see if we can parlay that into actually something really nice. And for one reason or another, I don't know. There's a couple things that we could point at, but I resist doing that.
Yeah.
It just kind of went dormant for a little bit. And then lo and behold, a year ago, I mean, it should have been out even not sooner than it should have been, but even sooner than the later it was.
Yeah.
Well, we had a deal. We had a great company come in, make a great offer, want to do worldwide distribution for it. We went into the process of getting that ready for them, and because of again a couple reasons that you could point to, that deal ended up not happening after 6 months of waiting for it to finalize.
Wow.
And this was right when COVID started hitting in February.
Right.
And then now what do you do? No one knows what's going on. We're like, wow, we just lost this opportunity. This movie should have been out 4 months ago, and it's not out now. Now who knows when it's going to come out? But then, we ended up, revisiting a conversation with Gravitas Ventures that, ended up having a very quick turnaround, wanted to get it done, wanted to do the US Canada release, and where that kind of windowing took place. Because once you do a deal, it's not like the next Monday, like the movie's out. It's a big process, and it gets delayed. And with anything on VOD, with all of the platforms, it's a minimum of 90 days. And so we were coming up against a deadline to get this deal, this current release deal for US and Canada finalized and executed so they could go into that 90-day window, and it worked out to be October 27th. So it worked out a pretty good, kind of release window for something
absolutely.
Monster Squad themed, right? And, we've just been enjoying that. So there were some unknown reasons why it got delayed. There were some known reasons why the initial kind of release got not done. And then, kind of in this with what we see today with Gravitas for the US Canada release, we know exactly what that was, and that happened pretty quick. So we got it out, and hopefully people are enjoying it. And, it continues to do that because right now we're working on the international release. So we've got to get that out, an official deal out in the UK and in the rest of Europe and in Australia and South America and Asia and stuff like that. So, because there's fan bases out there. There's groups of people that are waiting for it.
Yeah, there is.
So we're working on it. Trust me. All of my UK fans, when they found out this initial one was only US Canada, they all went bonkers. Yeah. And I was like, trust me, you're next on the list. I promise. It's so important because there's so many awesome UK fans, and we're working on that right now. Actually, we were just exchanging some emails today on that topic. So hopefully it happens soon.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Loads of people have messaged me on Facebook saying, ask him this, ask him when it's coming out, ask him when the Blu-ray's coming out. And I'll come to those questions in a minute. Was there ever any point, ever a point where you thought, shit, we're not going to get this out?
Sure. There's always that point where you think you're going to have this, giant kind of acquisition, or, that's what you hope for, like really quick and get it out. And honestly, this movie probably should have been out 2 years ago, right after our festival run. One of the interesting things that, it's not a main reason, but I think something that counts in, and we didn't find this out until way after our festival run, but during our festival run, a lot of the labels and distributors and studios and brands that acquire festival films and put them out, saw the movie, enjoyed it, liked it, but they all assumed it was already a studio picture that had a deal, so they never even approached us.
Right. Oh.
Because they saw it, they said, this is not typical kind of, indie fare, and it looks so slick and polished and enjoyable that we didn't even know this was available. And by the time we were like, no, we'd love to have a conversation with you, kind of the end of the year was already done. Their festivals acquisitions were already, piled up. And you're like, wow, there's an interesting thing to hear, 2-3 months after the fact that, everybody loved your doc, that festivaled awesome, but they assumed it was already taken. So they didn't call you. We ran into that a handful of times, which is very interesting.
Seriously.
And, you know, and then another thing on that, you know, a lot of big brands and studios, they see it as very, very nichey. And it probably is. But, you know, we tried to make it a little less nichey while it's not just about Monster Squad or not just about Monster Squad fans. But, you know, people that haven't seen the Monster Squad can enjoy this documentary as well, because it will connect them with something that they are impacted by.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. But a lot of people, you know, some people don't see that. And they're like, well, you know, and sales, especially international sales, is very categorical. And it, you know, it's very kind of targeted. And some people are like, we don't know what to do with this, or it's so nichey that you know, that's not our bailiwick. But
yeah.
You know, there's a number of reasons why things don't happen. And if everybody thinks that everything happens overnight in the entertainment industry, you couldn't be farther from the truth. Things take so much longer than you think they should.
Yeah.
And they do, you know, and they even take longer than they actually could. That's just how the game goes.
Yeah, you've got to be mega patient.
That's extremely patient, because you think, you know, and even if someone tells you something's going to happen, you don't bank on it until you see it.
Yeah, I think that's why I would be a rubbish filmmaker, because I've got no patience whatsoever. I'd be like, right, come on, let's get this done.
I'm actually working with a guy right now on a potential project who it doesn't, you know, is not fluent in, you know, that side of it. And, you know, we have a conversation on a Wednesday and something isn't done like on Friday, he's like pulling his hair out. And I'm like, my man, you've got a lot. We just relax. Just relax. You've got a lot of, you are in fine shape. Nothing changes. And, you know, this is not how it goes. So be patient.
Is my video, am I still moving for use?
It freezes up a little bit. It's frozen now, but
it's frozen completely for me. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, it's frozen now completely for me on you as well, Adam.
Right,
sometimes it's background stuff and what they use in the back, but I've had that experience too. But that's a cool photo, so it's good.
It's not all about me. So Sherv, I think you've got some questions lined up, haven't you? You've got some questions you're dying to ask.
Yeah. Andre, how did you find the transition going from obviously being in front of the camera as an actor to going behind the camera as a director? Was it more challenging?
It's you know, both things are challenging. You know, don't let anybody tell you different. But they're just challenging in different ways. I've always had, you know, it wasn't sort of like a clean break, like new thing jumping in, never been here before. You know, I've produced stuff, I've developed stuff, you know, I've made stuff on different levels and different scales. And I've also done, you know, I've worked and lived in different industries other than entertainment. And, you know, when you're in the event and hospitality and travel, you know, kind of realm, you understand how things are put together and how logistics work, and, you know, how teams of people have to get this done by a certain date. And that's just what a producer does. And, you know, being around that on the front of the camera, what's interesting is people think being in front of the camera has a very myopic view. But if you actually understand what being in front of the camera is, when you're in front of the camera, you may be the only one in frame. But when you're looking at the camera, you're seeing everything behind the camera happen.
Yep.
And when you're off camera, you're watching all the machinations and seeing how A and B work together with C, and, you know, all these people on a movie shoot or a TV show or whatever you're doing. And so I just think that experience of growing up in the industry in front of the camera and absorbing all of that, you know, and then growing up and, you know, going through your teenage years and going through college and into adulthood, all of that just helps with everything that you can do. Because, you know, people make light of, you know, sometimes of younger actors or kid actors. You actually got to give them a little bit more credit than a lot of people do as a whole, because you're asking someone that may be 5, 9, 13 years old to show up and be a professional on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of adults that are 25 or 30 can't do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think younger actors and kids in the business really, if it ends up having a good kind of trajectory, have a big head start on people in the world, because they get exposed to very high-end, very professional things that's work at a young age. So I think that just kind of translates into things that I'm, one, interested in, two, seem to be good at, and that's developing ideas, putting ideas together to create a thing, working with other people, because what I've also learned over over the years is that it's very hard to do something on your own. And if you think you're capable and you don't want anybody to have a hand on it or, be involved, it's not going to be as good as it could be. It could be okay, but it's not going to be as good as if you had other people working with you that know what they're doing. Sometimes you got to give a little control up. Sometimes you can't be as control freakish, and you have to be open to other ideas or thoughts, and letting go and delegating is very important. And so you learn how to do all that stuff over time. And what happened with Wolfman's Got Nards, if we're talking about a singular kind of experience, is everything came together at the right time, with the right timing, with the right people, going into, a 12-month period of everything falling into place. And when you step back and look, when you're doing it in the middle of it, all this stuff, like I said, we did so much stuff in 12 months that you don't even remember half of it. But when you're inside of that and you're looking at next week or next month, and you have all these things lined up that you have to do, and you have to hit those milestones and guideposts and make sure you're doing this, otherwise you're hosed. One, it's a lot of work. It's a little stressful just because it's a lot of energy, but also it's very rewarding after the fact when you look back and go, holy shit, we did a lot. Look, how did we do that? It just all worked, and it's the other people. And if you tried to do all that on your own, you would have fallen down on your face miserably. Yeah. And so you got to give credit where credit is due. But I loved the transition. When you're working with other people and you have a say in what something's going on, whether financially or executively or creatively, those are fun spots to be in. And I thoroughly enjoyed the whole process. And now we're finally enjoying the process of getting it out to the world and seeing the feedback. So that's the second half of making something like this.
Fantastic, superb.
And do you get nervous? Sorry, Sherv. Are you nervous when you're right? We're finished. We're going to put it out there. Do you go and hide somewhere, or I imagine that's really.
I think anybody that makes anything, that's artistic or creative or storytelling, even a documentary, even if you're doing a hard news documentary, right? When you bundle it up and you hit save, and it's out of your hands and it's out to you can't do anything about it anyway. It's just out there. So one thing that we've always talked about, even before we let this thing go, is if we put our effort into it and hit the kind of goals that we wanted to hit, if we think that, then we should be okay. But you've got to let it go. It's like a painting or a song. If you put a song on the radio and it goes out there and people don't like it, what do you remake the song? Like there's only very little you can do. And so you've really just got to let go, detach, and hope everybody enjoys it, and then connect with the next level of it. And I think we did that pretty good. But I think we knew one of the things that alleviated that anxiety. You're always scared, you're always kind of anxious, when someone's seeing it for the first time. But we had enough kind of test screenings and private little screener links with people that we knew that were like, this is pretty good. That we were okay when it was a bigger audience at a festival. But you don't run and hide. I don't sit in the first couple of times. I like to, if it's an audience, like we haven't been in a theater in a year, but Henry and I would stand in the back of the festival theater, wherever it was, and we wouldn't really watch the movie because we know the movie. We would watch the reaction of the people watching the movie. Yeah. And that's where filmmakers and creatives, get their kind of, get juiced from. Yeah. And it was, we knew in the very first screening that it played well with a group of people. And that's kind of how we made it. Unfortunately, right now, everybody's watching it on their own at home, or maybe with their family or one of their kids, or, I think the biggest group, anybody's watching right now is 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
But we really kind of made it to be shared in that, common experience group, kind of, in a darkened theater with like-minded people, and you sit down the lights go and you watch something that you all shared and experienced, and then you leave and you're all connected ever since. We don't have that right now, but we did in our festival run. So we had a lot of great reactions, and you could feel that energy in the room when people were watching this. And it's sort of a roller coaster ride of a film. There's the setups and payoffs, and there's happy moments, and there's sad moments. There's deep emotional moments, and then there's moments that you don't know that are there until someone tells you they're there. And that's what's fascinating about watching the reaction and hearing the feedback as the creatives when people come out and tell you what they think about it.
Super.
Cool. Sorry, Sherv, on you go, pal.
Oh, it's fine. Going back to the Monster Squad, were you able to take home any of the props from the house? Okay. And do you know what happened to Phoebe's scraps?
Yes and yes.
What were you able to take home?
Would you like a laugh? Okay, so we want let's start with the first part. Actually, let's start with the second part. I do know what happened with scraps. Ashley got to keep scraps, and apparently this is Ashley's story. She tells it more heartbreaking than I can. I guess when she was a teenager, like it stayed, she kept it for years, and she was a teenager, I believe, and maybe they were moving. I think they were moving or doing spring cleaning or something. And her mom was just, boxing up stuff and getting rid of some things, and said, "What do you need the stuffed animal? We don't need the stuffed animal. You're not a kid anymore, I guess." And scraps got donated or tossed into limbo. So what we like to say is the original scraps is actually still out there floating around in limbo with Frankenstein's monster. So so scraps is out there somewhere. I know a couple of the awesome fans, that are at the top of the list with you, Sherv, have researched and looked and found what that toy was and actually what that plush dog was. So there are some cool alternate scraps out there. I call them the other dimensional scraps. So maybe they are they can at least channel scraps' original energy. As for me, I actually I have a lot of production stuff and some knickknacks and stuff from production, not necessarily the movie. But I have my entire wardrobe, and all the way up from the shoes to the jeans to the yellow flannel shirt, the Adidas jacket, and of course the actual Stephen King rule shirt, which awesome. There's a little bit of play at the end of the doc that we show that, because that's been sitting in a box for 30 years. Now it comes out to have people enjoy it a little bit. And it's one of my favorite bits in the entire film. And that was put together by Wes Caldwell, which is an amazing bit. And everybody gets a kick out of seeing that thing come out of the box. And the other cool thing is I kept Rudy's bow because I was into archery at the time when I was a teenager. Wow. And so I was like, hey, if anybody's not going to have that, I'll take that. Because one, it's a cool keepsake. And two, I have 6 other of my own bows. I just want to put this on the rack, with that, because I think it's a cool keepsake. And lo and behold, that I was very prescient with the fact that Rudy's bow is a rather iconic prop from the movie. And this is well before we didn't know the movie was going to work. We all got that stuff before the movie bombed. And then when the movie bombed, it didn't matter what props you had until 20 years later. But ironically, I had Rudy's bow. I brought it to an event to give to Ryan Lambert, and the place went crazy. He ended up leaving it at my friend's house for a year and a half in San Francisco. And then my friend moved to Montana. And so the bow went with him to Montana. So the bow's been all over the place. And I thought it was a great idea to do as part of our podcast or a road show that Ryan and I, get in an RV and we drive to Montana to go get his bow. And I should have made that happen, but we didn't. But I had my friend ship it to me, and it toured with us for a little bit in the festival season. And it is now Ryan and I decided as we have with a couple of our things, that why do they sit in a box and not be enjoyed by anybody of the world? So I'm really into this, this phase of sharing and giving things to people, or letting them borrow them and have them on display. And Rudy's bow is now sitting in this amazing collectibles archive of a good friend of ours named Ciro Nielli, who's actually in the documentary, who's a very well-known and talented artist and animator. And so that bow is sitting. We said, because we go to his house a lot. He lives with Grace Chan, who made the I Heart Rudy zine, little mini magazine that's put out there now. So she makes that. He did the art for it. But he has this awesome house, and we go over there and have pool parties and cook out and watch movies on 16 millimeter sometimes. And he's got his workspace in the garage. He's got this amazing collectibles, room in his new house. And we said, something like this needs to be in a place where other people can enjoy it. So Rudy's bow is hanging on his wall with a little placard, that he put up. So Rudy's bow is in good place right now.
Fantastic. Superb.
Right, one more, Sherv.
All right, okay.
And then I'll go into the Facebook questions.
Right, okay. So, Andre, I know that obviously your favourite part of when you were filming the Monster Squad was the end sequence. Was there any other standout moments that really that you loved while making the film?
Yeah, obviously the pat answer is always that end sequence, because that's just amazing, right? We all got to do our own stunts. I got to do a dive roll. I got to hit a Wolfman with a bat. We speed up in a car, and there's actually a deleted scene where I'm actually flying into limbo, but they've got to hold on to me in like this human chain, and so I'm up in this rigging. So, and then the fans are going, and debris is being flown at you, and monsters are exploding. That's an amazing sequence. Other awesome part, I really like the scene with Sean and Del in the bathroom, and that which also is the setup to the payoff where you're watching the movie on the roof. And so I think the dynamic between Sean and his dad is very cool. If you had a cool relationship with your dad, then you connect with that. If you didn't have a cool relationship with your dad growing up, you still connect with that, because that's something that you always wanted. So I think it's a neat conversation. And I think it shows kind of the connection between Del and Sean a little bit, that, you were like, we can see where this could go in a couple years. Like, they're still going to be tight, and, it's still going to be cool, no matter that the family's kind of imploding. Because a lot of people don't realize that the Crenshaws are like disintegrating. Like, there's a lot of family dynamics going on here, which I think a lot of kids at the time identified with, because their parents were going through the same thing. And unless you see the movie on widescreen, you miss a lot of things on visually. And one of the things is, before Del screeches up, or before the treehouse blows up, the mom's reaction, she's at the door with luggage. So she's leaving, like she's leaving. What is happening? And the world's going crazy. There's monsters, and like this family's breaking apart. I think that's an interesting kind of dynamic there. But there's so many great little bits, and you watch this movie over and over again over the years, and you find great little things that you miss or you don't pay attention to. And I think the scene with the two pilots in the old cargo plane is a great scene. It's like, those guys are such great New York day player, character actors. And you're like, what? Who are these guys? I want to see a series with those guys just flying stuff around the world. That'd be a great show. Those are, I think the stuff with Sean and Del in the bathroom and then on the roof is probably really cool. And which is mirrored by the scene with Emily and Phoebe about being scared, and the candle and monsters and lightning. I think a lot of people relate to that, and I think those are very poignant points in the movie.
Definitely, yeah.
So listen, Andre, I put a thing on Facebook saying that Sherv and I were going to be talking to you, and if anybody had any questions to put to you, and I got one or two good ones.
Okay.
So excuse me while I look on my phone to read them. So it's trendy, I think, these days to talk about, with our favorite movies from our childhood, reboots, sequels. We hear about, is there going to be a Goonies 2 all the time? We hear about, is there going to be a Back to the Future 4 all the time? So somebody is asking, Andy Kelly is asking, will we ever get a reboot? And if so, would you be part of it, Andre?
Andy Kelly, it's a great question. Not the first time we've gotten it. They were rebooting it for a while, starting back in like 2010. I believe Rob Cohen, who's a huge movie producer and big studio director, was also a young producer on the Monster Squad, ironically. When kind of the resurgence started happening, he teamed up, I believe, with Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's company, and was looking to reboot Monster Squad. I think some timing, it took a long time to get developed. Then Universal announced the Dark Universe, and they kind of, squashed that idea. And then the Dark Universe died. So,
I was going to say.
But they're resurrecting that in the right way, I think. That's a whole other conversation. But I think they're doing it right in the current phase. But reboots, I don't know if work because you can't make the same movie. If you want to make a movie in the same vein, call it something different, but have the same kind of, heart and feel and subject matter, that'd be great. The problem with that is we've seen that a lot in the last 10 years. Obviously led by Stranger Things, which is really a group of kids that find supernatural stuff happening. They've got a band together. They're the only ones that can figure out the problem. And this is personal. It doesn't have, I have no say in it. I don't think a remake or a reboot works as well as other stories in the universe. Because you can't make this movie today. You can't have kids doing or participating or saying the things where exactly why everybody connects with the Monster Squad from 1987, be it problematic or not. It's the reality, and that's what they connect with it. You can't do that today. Not only just the language or the situation. I think you could change the characters and have different situations. And if you want to call it Monster Squad, of a current day, great. Just do a new story. Don't try to recreate the original one and, plug square pegs into round holes. That's always a mistake. Just create a new story. And that would be totally awesome. And you can mix up the characters or rebrand them as much as you wanted to. Just make it a new story, like a continuation or completely separate. A sequel is a different story. Everybody wants a Goonies 2. Was that Goonier? Like, I think we call it Goonies 2. Is it Goonier?
Well, Adam Goldberg. Adam Goldberg, who's in Wolfman's Got Nards, I know, he put it on social media a couple of weeks ago that he was going to see Dick Donner with a proposal for a sequel.
Yeah, for another Goonies.
For the Goonies.
Which someone like, if anybody's going to do it the right way, Adam F. Goldberg will, because he is part of that world. He is that world. And he's sort of, he's sort of the Pied Piper or, the kind of band leader of nostalgia and 80s stuff. And he has so much enthusiasm that it would be done fun and right. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to get an audition for that. I got to call on that Adam and find out if that happens, right? But other story. I think in Monster Squad world, there's even other stories. Would a sequel be cool? Sure, as long as it's an awesome story and the right people are involved. Let me answer the second half of Andy's question. If they make something and do it, I have no say whether I'm involved or not. You have to be approached and asked. So it's not a guarantee or a given. So I just wanted to make sure I answered his second part. But I think there's some cool stories inside the Monster Squad universe. Look, Dracula's been walking around for 100 years until our time, waiting for the balance of evil and good to be equal, so he can shatter the amulet and take over. What was he doing for 100 years? That's an entire TV show. Like what was he doing in the 50s or the 20s? That'd be amazing. And I would love to see Duncan Regehr walking around in 1942 Vienna or something. That'd be an amazing story. De-age him or whatnot, he still looks phenomenal. He's a beautiful human being even today. I mean,
Isn't he?
This guy's amazing, and a fantastic actor to boot. But there's also continuing stories. You can do animation, you could do graphic novels, you could do a web series. You could do whatever you wanted to, because I think there's a wide story in there. But I think rebooting or remaking is probably the least effective, because you're just trying to copy something that you can't copy. And it's like having, a Xerox machine that the toner's, running low. And yeah, you sort of get a good facsimile of what you're trying, but it's not going to be as bold and deep as you wanted it to be. So just come up with something, come up with something different, come up with something new. The problem with Monster Squad stuff, it's always been rights issues. Who has the rights? What's available? And hopefully in the next year, that will end up being in the hands of the people that it should be in, and maybe something happens. Who knows? Let's all wait and see.
Cool. Fingers crossed. You mentioned before, Andre, perhaps inevitably Stranger Things. Movies like Monster Squad, Goonies are obviously huge inspiration for programs like Stranger Things, which I love, by the way. And on Facebook, Ellis Meredith Owen has asked, who would win if the Monster Squad came up against the Stranger Things kids? I'm presuming she means in a battle to the death.
Well, that's a pretty dark question there, because I love all those kids, and I'm assuming she's meaning that the kids of the Monster Squad battling the kids of Stranger Things, not like in real life. Like, would I be punching Finn Wolf or something? Because I don't want to do that. I think we could team up and be pretty bad.
Just holding your hand out on his head. Swinging like that.
So, look, I think they're totally different. But to be honest, and not just biased, look, the Stranger Things crew is awesome. They go on these amazing adventures, and Millie Brown is amazing in that show. I think everybody's awesome. She's a standout as a performer, obviously. But if we're looking at the characters and the subject matter, I'd have to go with the squad, just because we can shoot bows and shotguns and blow stuff up, and we're a little more hardcore. And I think the Stranger Things kids grew up, in the kind of bubbled generation just a bit, where they weren't exposed to all of the stuff we shouldn't have been exposed to, which I think tips the balance. So it kind of, our whole conversation comes full circle maybe there.
The Stranger Things kids are busy playing D&D. Monster Squad guys were out there kicking ass already. Right. What
there's nothing wrong with playing D&D. I mean, it's a fun, imaginative game. And it's great. There's some awesome people that play it hardcore. But I think the Monster Squad grew up and they stopped playing D&D because they did it for real. But so do the kids at Stranger Things. But I think that's what gives them that information and that knowledge to go ahead and come up with the ways to win the day. And that's where I think imagination, whereas kids, even in our generation, if you were the D&D crowd, or the card playing crowd, or the imaginative otherworld fantasy game players, you were thought of as a little kooky or a little weird or a little nerdy. But what kids that didn't play those games or weren't involved in games, that's where your imagination grows, and you have some kind of creative thinking of how to solve problems and critical thought and how to gameplay and role play out, to the end of something. And I think kids that end up doing that end up doing better later than aren't involved or exposed in things like that. And they just kind of glide through school and listen to teachers and study for the test. That I don't think that works out as well as people think it does. I think it's those imaginative kids that are a little weird at the beginning, get to use their minds and their imagination, their creativity to solve problems, which sort of goes against what, whatever you want to call establishment kind of, they just want you to study for the test and be kind of a drone worker bee. Sometimes I guess it seems that way. But it's the kids that always come through at the end, that were the weirdos that have the solutions of the day. Look at our heroes of today. Our heroes of today are the kids that sat around and played with, computer code You know,
Yeah.
like, that's not even, what are you doing? It was like, there's a whole other language. And they're like, you're weird. Like,
Yeah.
you're totally weird. Like, I don't want to play with you. They're like, that's okay. I don't want to play with you either. I want to sit here and learn ASCII or DOS or,
Yeah.
C++. And then now these are the people creating every single thing that you use today.
Yeah.
So those weirdos that sat around and tried to learn a different language 20 years ago are now your heroes of today. So
Exactly.
you got to celebrate that. I don't know. Answering her question, I think the Monster Squad were probably, at the very end it might be close, but just because we were a little more abrasive, that might swing the battle.
Yeah, I think so. You would have to concentrate on 11, suppress her, and then you'd have a chance.
That's the problem. You've got someone on their team. Yeah, I don't know how we would do that. I mean, like I said, I don't know. Like, she's tough. That's a tough character, and she's got abilities. So maybe it's not so cut and dry.
Maybe not. Matthew Whaley or Wally is asking, and I don't know if this is a question you can answer, Andre, but I'll ask it anyway. Why can't I buy the Monster Squad on Blu-ray anywhere?
That's actually an easy question to answer. And is that it's out of print again, just like everything was before. It's amazing that Monster Squad has gone through this evolution. It was, shot and shown on 35 millimeter. It went to HBO. Kids taped it on their VHS and beta machines. It was in your local video store on videotape. It was on 2 different laser discs, a US and a Japanese import during the 90s. And then it was dead for a number of years. And then we saw that 35 millimeter print in a theater. And that's what led to Lionsgate putting out a DVD. We'd never had a DVD of this movie before in widescreen. So it's restored, looks good, had a double disc in there with some deleted scenes and some terrible interviews from me. And, everybody else is great. And then a Blu-ray comes out, which is insane. You're like, oh, they had a DVD. This is amazing. We finally get a DVD. And then there's a Blu-ray that sells out. Then another Blu-ray comes out and sell. They only make so much, and and then now you come into 2013, 14. Now it's on streaming services, so it's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's on Hulu, it's on Showtime. It's insane that Monster Squad has run the gamut of every possible medium that you could watch it on, but it's hard to buy again. So now it's like you've got to trade. If you got to trade 3 or 4 of your other DVDs for one copy of the Monster Squad, or pay someone $100 on eBay to get a Blu-ray, even if it's not signed. So we're right back into, prior to the resurgence again.
Yeah.
But hopefully, buying your Blu-ray or DVD of Wolfmans Got Nards or watching that on VOD, will satiate that need for a little bit right now. But it just kind of compounds it because everybody watches the doc and just wants to own Monster Squad again if they don't already own it.
Exactly.
So the question, or the answer to the question, is it's out of print again. Like, no one's actively making Blu-rays of the Monster Squad right now. Will that change next week? Who knows?
There might just be building demand for the 4K release.
It will, yeah. And I don't want to get, this is a whole rabbit hole. And, if I was doing this on Twitter, I would get eviscerated. Is a 4K version what we need? I thought the Blu-ray looks amazing. It was a pretty good transfer.
Yeah.
You just don't look, a 4K restoration all depends on the people manipulating the technology.
That's right.
To make it not look like shit.
Yeah.
And I kind of, even some Blu-rays, the transfer doesn't really work well. I think Monster Squad was okay. Yeah. But you've seen, we've just had another example, I guess, this week or last week, but we had a big case 4 or 5 years ago of a medieval piece of sculpture art that they're restoring, and it gets sanded down and made into this just awful thing. Yep. And I think that's what restorations of movies with H on them do, just to bring it up to current kind of Marvel universe aesthetic. And they're like, do we need that? It's like, how smooth does my face need to get? My face is pretty smooth. I was 13 in it, or do we really need to see the skin cells falling off of Dell's face when he's shaving in the bathroom. You're like, how perfect do you need to get? Look, if a 4K version comes out, I'll celebrate it with everybody else. I just hope it's a good transfer. But we've seen some examples that don't look real good.
Predator.
I've paid for a 4K TV, so I want to use it. I want to have your smooth face on my 4K TV.
And look, I hope it happens someday. That would be amazing because, again, like I ran that gamut of the list of different media that people have. Like, hey, the next evolution is just super ultra high def. And look, there's some action sequences and some of the effects would be really badass. And, and if it's really done well, but that's where that kind of transfer and the technology can either really help or really hurt. What does that Wolfman in the phone booth transition look like in extreme digitized detail where it's not necessarily real, but, it's a digital version of the real and then just, really made sharp? Hopefully that would look cool because that's all practical effects. Yeah. Can you 4K some old digital effects and make them look better? Absolutely. That's what technology is. But can you super 4K some practical effects that were as real as they get at the time?
Yeah.
That would be kind of really weird and interesting. Does a 4K transition, transfer of Monster Squad get flat and just really vibrant, or does it have depth and some and the shadow? It depends. We've all seen different versions of it. One of the scariest things I ever saw in my life, I was in like an electronics store, like a Best Buy, or it might have been a Circuit City back then, and I saw this giant rear projection TV that was showing the DVD transfer of Top Gun, and it looked awful. It was the scariest thing, and I happened to walk in. I sat there and watched the movie because I love the movie, right? And it got to kind of the intimate scene between Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis, and I was like, "What am I watching? This is scary." Like, it was just not good. And I was like, "What is it?" I was like, "Is it the TV? Because you guys should not do this as the floor model, or is this the disc we're watching that's just so weird and flat and almost look cartoonish?" And I was like, no. So I'm always leery about something like that because I saw the sex scene in Top Gun in ultra like Blu-ray on rear projection Sony TV, and like I don't know, it was 2004 or something. It was just awful.
Yeah.
And I'll make this the last one. John Jürgen Hudson is asking you, Andre, what are your memories of being on the A-Team and Knight Rider?
Always the two that come up first, right? Well, John, I'll tell you, it's a great question because there's reasons those come up. I was very fortunate enough as a kid to do a lot of awesome episodics, TV shows, be a guest star on cool shows. One of the main reasons I was fortunate enough to do a lot of these cool shows is all of the actual television series that I was a part of never lasted more than one season. So, my career was, I'm the kid that did 5 or 6 TV shows that went one season instead of one show that went 6 seasons that everybody knows, right? So in the interim, in those windows of open time, I got to do awesome shows like the A-Team and Knight Rider. And those were just regular kind of audition things. You get cast in them and you show up on set. And of course, when you're a kid at that time, you're already a fan of these shows because they've been on. So you're like, holy crap, I'm getting to do the A-Team. And the A-Team was awesome because, who doesn't grow up wanting to be a lumberjack and who doesn't want to hang out with the A-Team? I got to do both. So, I always say this with a disclaimer. I'm pretty sure, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure the confidence level is high that I'm the only person that has ever chopped down a tree with Mr. T. So that's pretty badass. And in Knight Rider, totally what was cool about being in an episode of Knight Rider is my character had nothing to do with Michael Knight or the plot line. I just got to hang out with Kit and do homework. And so that was, who doesn't want to do that? And, it's, you get to sit in the car, you get to read the scenes. And then you see the show and you're like, hey, I'm talking with Kit. How many people get to do that? Not many. So, I was very fortunate enough, in my entire, kid professional life of being on film and TV to do a lot of cool things. And you have to, John, the one thing you take out of that, in your two examples, but I put it in the whole kind of experience ball, is you realize, yeah, people think that's really cool, and it is. And what you really have to understand is and appreciate is that not very many human beings get to do that. So you're in a very small group. And so you should learn and appreciate and understand that that's very cool to other people. And that means it should be cool to you as well, instead of just dismissing as that it's not important. And so, being a kid actor, there's a ton of kid actors at any one time. There's a group of kids that do a majority of the work. About 20% do 80% of the work, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. And I think I was very fortunate enough to be in that 20% of my time. And you've got to appreciate that not very many, people get to be in that situation. So you have to appreciate that just a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Andre, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. We've kept you for an hour and 15 minutes. I'm sorry for taking up an hour 15.
Oh, that's nothing. Trust me. I'm sure we can chat about other stuff. So let's set up another time. We'll go another hour and 15. We'll talk about something else.
You're absolutely on, because I bet Sherv's got more than 3 questions written down there.
Oh man, definitely. Yeah, no, it's been an
we'll
honor.
We'll do Geeky Nerd Podcast redo version volume 2, Return of the Sherv.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
We can reboot this episode of the podcast.
It's called the reboot Return of the Sherv. We love it. Great.
Great idea.
Oh yeah, and Andre Gower, but that's the secondary part.
Huge congratulations with Wolfman's Got Nards, mate. Absolutely loved it. Like you say, it's doing really well. Everybody loves it. Just need to get it across the whole world now. And I wish you every success, pal.
Yeah. I appreciate it. That's great to hear from you guys over there. I can't wait to get back over there, and we'll hang out for sure. Boy, if there was only Adam got to get an event, or maybe Carnoustie will want me to come and do Andre Gower plays Carnoustie again on Instagram Live. I'll do something like that. Or, King's Barnes, they're a little private, so they might be a little, skeptical of that. But, I'll come over for that, and then we'll hang around, and we'll have some, we'll have a pint or two, and, we'll listen to fun music and watch movies. I just got to get over there again. So, you guys make it happen. I'll try to make it happen. We'll do something. But everybody stay safe, and we'll make it happen soon.